Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you all for finding the time to participate in today's webinar entitled Leadership and Development, Building Collaborative Trust Across Universities. My name is Dr. Sharala, and I will be the moderator for this webinar today. I am a lecturer at the School of Liberal Arts and Sciences at Taylor's University. Now we're going to watch one short video clip. Let's watch.
Welcome to Taylor's University.
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 Today, we're going to get hands-on with these racing cars. Today, we're live streaming with a chef from France. Today, you'll judge what happens next. Today's about collaborative brainstorming. Today, we take on research that changes lives. Today was a success.
At Taylor's, we strive to provide more than just an education. We equip our students with the skills and attitudes to become successful entrepreneurs and leaders. The value of our degrees is also enhanced by our high-impact, internationally recognized research. Our growing reputation for both teaching and research is placing Taylor's on course to become one of Asia's elite universities.
Before we begin, let me run through the house rules for this session. If you have any questions during the presentation, just post them in the chat box. We will open the floor at the end of all presentation. Our speaker will do their very best to answer as many questions as they can in the time provided. For today's discussion, we have 4 eminent speakers. They are widely known for their expertise on leading in times of transition and Also, we have our Honorable Professor Dr. Pradip Nair, Deputy Vice Chancellor and Chief Academic Officer of Taylor's University, to give his closing remarks. I would like to start with warm welcome to Yang Bahagia Professor Dato Insinyur Dr. Muhammad Saleh Jaafar, who is the Deputy Director General of Higher Education, Ministry of Education, Malaysia. And we have Professor Dr. Pradip Nair, who is Deputy Vice Chancellor and Chief Academic Officer of our Taylor's University, Malaysia, will be joining us in a few minutes. And we have Professor Dato Dr. Harlina Aliza Haji Siraj, Director of Center for Liberal Studies, Pusat Citra Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia. She is a Professor of ONG and Medical Education from the Faculty of Medicine, Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia. Next, we also have Dr. Joy Sheila. She is the Dean of Far Eastern University, Manila, Institute of Tourism and Hostel Management. She is also an accreditor of a Philippine Association of Colleges and Universities, Commission on Accreditation and Regional Quality Assurance, theme of the Philippine Commission on Higher Education for the Tourism and Hospitality Program. And we have Dr. Tilakawati Shanmuganathan. She is a senior lecturer with the Department of English Language, Faculty of Languages and Linguistics, University of Malaya, Kuala Lumpur. She is the current president of the Persatuan I-Alumni UKM. She is also a member of the team to receive the Erasmus Project grant of the European Union, which focuses on the internationalization of higher education in Southeast Asia. Respected guests and participants who have joined us today, welcome everyone. This topic of leadership and collaborative trust is even more significant today as we battle against the fast-changing education landscape, which has been further escalated by the current pandemic. This situation has shown the importance of great leadership and partnerships may be key for future success. In the education sector, the strategic planning process, the need to strengthen our collaborative relationships and to build on the progress of universities is the key in the moving forward. With this effectively in place and streamlining efforts will lead to reduction and duplication of effort. Dear ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would like to invite Professor Dato Dr. Harlina Haliza Haji Siraj. She will share the steps taken on recent improvements and will explain the systematic, comprehensive process for building collaborative relationship. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you, Dr. Sharala. Let me share my slides. Assalamu alaikum and very good afternoon to all. Firstly, thank you for inviting me to this very distinguished session, to my panelists, and of course to all who is here making their time to be with us this afternoon. My role will be as the first speaker to set out more or less the discussion. So this would be, beginning with the glossary. So we just go into the, what universities means, collaboration. And of course, when we talk about collaboration, we need to also define competitions and also trust. And then I will go into the gist of this, which is the golden circle, according to Simon Sinek. You start with why. Why do university, have to collaborate? And why don't we just compete? And how do collaborative networking looks like for universities? And that is actually more or less looking into an example of that. So basically, university is an institution of higher learning where they will be teaching research and also granting of academic degrees. But allow me to just go a little deeper into the purpose of university, or more or less the idealism of universitas, quoting what Rob Raymond, from the president of Nexus Institute in the Netherlands, whereby university actually comes from the Latin words universitas, which is total knowledge. And in the 17th and 18th century, during the European time, there's a group of reformists or humanists who established the university as an educational institute, producing well-educated people of high character and practical wisdom. So that's basically reminding us all who are in the as educators in the university, this is actually the main purpose. And of course, these are the universities which are world famous. They are still functioning after 100 of years, contributing to the field of knowledge. And collaboration is actually part of the 4 C's of the 21st century skill. Besides thinking, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration. And when all that overlaps, you can now produce creative innovations. But of course, it is more than just teamwork. It is working together for the same goal. And that can be very challenging. I'm just putting this into the glossary because competition is more something like we are used to. This is very much more or less instinctive within our primitive nature, that we are born, wanting to compete. We don't have to teach people how to compete. We don't have to teach these 1-year-old toddlers to compete. They just put 2 or 3 of them with, maybe some chocolates or toys, and they will start to compete. So it is more natural to be competing most probably than collaborating. And of course, collaboration is the new competition now. So let us don't do this alone. And well, for trust, basically it is the belief of the reliability and the ability of the other person to do something. And the opposite of that is mistrust. So when trust is the essential element for collaboration, so mistrust is definitely the element that can dissolve any collaboration. Yeah. So let's go into this. So why do we have to collaborate? Why don't we just compete? And I think it is just so familiar for all of us to compete. We've been put into ranks in so many ranking. I'm sure for those of my friends from other parts of this region, you have your own ranking, and then we have to compete at the level of our country. And then we start to see whether we have, improved or not. Yeah, you can see the names of the university there. Taylor's University is also, in this top 10 for 2020. And of course, we have been sort of more or less competing as well at the Asian level, and not definitely in the world. We are also trying to find our place. So most probably, competition is good as long as it is healthy. But once it is becoming, the ranking becoming more or less the destination of your university, then there goes. That is when most probably it starts to become unhealthy. So basically, we collaborate because it is beneficial for all, right from the student to the academic staff, and even to the society, to the community, to the nation, and also to the world as a whole. So good things will happen when we start to learn with, from, and about each other. This is when we, start building bridges, knocking down walls, and we're out of our silo, and we start to see beautiful things happening. And we definitely collaborate because we want to enhance creativity and innovation and find solution. And the most perfect example would be now, during this pandemic, we are all collaborating to make sure that we get this vaccine within this 1 or 2 years, because we really need that. So there is this time when you start to open your door and you start knocking on doors, and we start to benefit from each other's progress. So how do we form these linkages, and how do we collaborate? I would like to refer to this one article on the QS ranking website. Why are international collaborations so important for universities? Definitely, it is not an overnight venture. It takes a long time, but definitely it starts from understanding the culture and goal of each other's institution, so that we can be compatible, particularly in terms of ethics and standard, and the principles, so that we can forge a strong connection. Whatever the method is used, for you to make sure that your collaboration and your partnership will last, is this alliance of ideas and goals. It means that we have to seek and select those institutions to partner very carefully, and to make sure that we are really on the same page at all levels and stages. So that is more or less the most important prerequisite. And this is what I like most. Research has shown that the best way to form this partnership and collaboration often stems from taking a personal approach, like what we're having today, And of course, academic staff once again are the university's best asset here. If you want to have collaboration, you have to get the right people, the right academic staff. We have a lot of friends around the world. Okay, and what are the conditions that will produce effective collaboration? Basically, this is not rocket science. This is just very common sense. Shared understanding of the issue and the perspective, the willingness and commitment to connect with each other, the clear and shared goals, mutual benefits. You are really bought into the idea. Trusting relationship. You must have right knowledge, right skill, right support, appropriate governance arrangement. This is what we want to hear from Prof. Dr. Salih Jaafar. And of course, the leadership that is there to show the right example of collaboration. So this is most probably the important gist of today's discussion. The secret recipe for collaboration is the intangibles. It's the trust, the collegiality, the partnership, the camaraderie, and also the professionalism. So what does a collective trust across universities look like? So basically, it depends on which area you want to see. Can be at the level of teaching and learning, academic programs, research excellence, community engagement and social entrepreneurship, or industrial strategic alliance. I'm taking the first as an example. So this is actually a new program that we introduced about 2 years ago, and we have the first cohort in the second year now, going to be third year. This is the Bachelor of Science in Liberal Studies UKM, and this is basically a futuristic education where we want the student to be job creators and industry ready and having all those attributes. And the approach of training the student would be multidisciplinary, interprofessional, and also transboundaries. And we want them to be, dynamic, organic, flexible, and agile. And for that, this is actually more or less the program or the curriculum. They will be spending 2 years or 3 years in the university and another 2 years or 1 year in industry. So basically the student will go by their concentration and the sky is the limit. They will actually tell us which are their concentration that they want to have more or less. And we actually put that into segments: science, technology, business management, social science, and humanities. And this is just briefly what they more or less, their ambition to have this as their concentration. For science, these are the lists. Technology, these are also the area. For business management, this, social science, and humanities. And of course, you can imagine that UKM cannot provide all those modules and courses, no matter how comprehensive we are. So within this 2 or 3 years, when they are in the university, this is where we need to collaborate between our local universities as well as international universities to provide those courses. So in summary, the way forward is to enhance collaboration between universities to benefit students and academician society, local and global. And to emphasize the importance of the intangibles, the trust, collegiality, partnership, camaraderie, and also professionalism. And of course, this requires institutional support, governance in terms of policies and grants to step up our collaborative effort. So with that, thank you. Back to you, Sharala.
Thank you, Professor. Thanks for your insight into this most crucial topic. Our next speaker is Dr. Joy Sheila. In a position of leadership, she will outline the strategies to create and build relationships between departments and units within the institution to ensure impactful integration and communication. Welcome, Dr. Joy.
Thank you, Dr. Sharala. Hi, good afternoon from the Philippines. So allow me to share my screen. Okay, so can you see my screen now? Okay, so a pleasant good afternoon once again. I'd like to greet as well Dr. Maud Saleh Jafar, the Deputy Director General of Higher Education of Malaysia, Dr. Nair, Vice Chancellor of Taylor's University, and fellow resource speakers, Dr. Halina, Dr. Tiladavati. And of course, I'd like to thank the team of Dr. Sharala, Professor Surit, Professor Guido, and the School of Liberal of Taylor's University for this invitation. So my presentation this afternoon is focused on contextualizing leadership and development through collaborative trust within our institute. So I'm from the Institute of Tourism and Hotel Management. Earlier, Dr. Harlina discussed extensively the need for building collaboration as part of the reason to thrive as a university, to be competitive, and there's so many areas for collaboration. But my talk would now focus on our experience as an institute in Far Eastern University, Manila. So I presented 10 slides. I'll be presenting 10 slides, and I hope to finish by in 10 minutes. Yes. So there. So our university was founded in 1928, and it was founded by our founder, Dr. Nicanor Reyes Sr. His vision was to provide education to the deserving but underprivileged. And sometime in 1945, as you can see in the photo, during the Battle of Manila, that was the World War II, our university was left into ruins, which caused thousands of deaths, including that of our founder. But the reason why I'm sharing this story is that his last words for his family was to be brave. So amidst all these problems at the time during the war, he said, be brave. And this story is not just the story of our university. This story has been translated into one of our guiding principles in educating our students and thriving as a university. The mantra of being brave has been translated into our school seal. As you can see in the left side, our school seal is the tamaraw. It's a Mindoro dwarf buffalo, which is already a critically endangered species. But now it has been our school seal because the buffalo or the tamaraw is brave, it is strong, and it is resilient. And this mantra of being brave through the years had some variations like be brave, brave as one. And this year, now it's our 92nd year, it's FEU, Braver Today. And this story of being brave is very timely now that we're facing this pandemic. Now, if you look at our institute, the Institute of Tourism and Hotel Management is one of the youngest institute. We have been established only in 2011, and we offer degree programs in hospitality management and tourism management. I'd just like to share some key changes in the educational landscape here in the Philippines. First is we had the Enhanced Basic Education Act of 2013, or the K-12 program, which added 2 years in the basic education, because at the time, we were only one of the 3 countries that has not adjusted its basic education. So with the change in the curricula, it also led to changes in our curriculum with the new CMO, that's the CHED Memorandum Order. In the Philippines, that's like the Ministry of Education. So they came up with a new program for the BS Tourism and BS Hospitality Management program in 2017. And I think one of the biggest challenges, should I say challenges, at the same time opportunities for Institute and across all the universities in the world, is the shift to flexible learning brought by the COVID-19 pandemic. Especially in the Philippines, where the Wi-Fi connection is not very strong and the access is limited, not just in Manila but in the other provinces. So that is really quite challenging. Okay, so the question that was posed to me for this presentation is, how do you create and build relationships between and among departments and units within your institution, and how to assure integration and communication across these relationships? It's a question that asks, how do you build relationships? And these relationships, they're not built overnight. So basically, it takes time. But to answer this, we look into how we actually make sure that we build relationships, we build trust through faculty and employee engagement programs that are also aligned to our university and in our institute's vision, mission, and values. So to start off with the story of being brave, we have in fact embraced that as as our tagline, or as the not even a marketing. It's really part of it. It encompasses all the programs that we have to show how we're in fact being brave and resilient, especially in the field of tourism and hospitality education, which I think has been most affected by this pandemic. We also have this FEU Cares. FEU Cares, it's a Kumustahan program. Kumustahan in Filipino means how are you? It has been institutionalized as a program because if you're if you have visited our university, our university are very strong in caring and showing that we care, and in showing empathy to our students. And this culture of caring, this culture of having a very friendly atmosphere. It's not even a program at the start, but now that we are in this flexible learning mode, it has been institutionalized as a program, so that even when there's online learning and there's very limited face-to-face engagement or interaction with students and faculty, we make it a point to kumusta, or to say hi, how are you, and engage with the faculty and students. At the same time, we came up with a model for teaching and learning, which really focuses on empathy. Because we also believe that the well-being of our students, it has to be, in terms of development, has to be holistic. And it's not just focused on intellectual development, but more so on the emotional and psychological well-being of our students. And our tagline, which is FEU Brave Plus One, FEU Brave, Braver Today, is also translated into our institute, which is Brave and Resilient ITHM. So we want to show, of course, in our programs, that we're brave because we're facing all these challenges in terms of from a macro and micro perspective. But despite all these challenges, we remain brave and resilient. We remain positive that we will be able to bounce back as an institute, and we're very positive that our industry will be able to bounce back. We came up also with this program. We call it the 3Cs SOP. Basically, it's 3C stands for competent, caring, and committed service-oriented professionals, because we envision to develop future tourism and hospitality professionals that are competent, they're committed, but most importantly, because we're a service-oriented industry, there has to be a lot of caring and empathy and kindness. So outside of research, training, instruction, and community extension, because these are all programs where we can have collaboration within and outside of the university. What else are we doing? So I'd just like to share some things that we're doing that are outside of this spectrum that is already being done by. I hope that by sharing this, you can learn a few lessons or maybe some insights on how to do it within your university. We came up with an ITHM barter community. This is an online community exclusive to our institute, where, because we want to revive the culture of barter, or the culture of exchange, because that's really not a Western culture that in traditional times they usually exchange goods. And during this pandemic, we want to have this engaging activity where our faculty, our students, our non-academic personnel can do bartering or exchanging of goods online. We also tap our chefs, because during the pandemic in the Philippines, from March to June, we had the quarantine. Until now, we have limited quarantine. So there's very limited movement outside of the house. And even in our university right now, we are not operating fully. Some of us are still working from home. I'm still working from home from time to time, and then from time to time I report to work in the office. We also came up with a cooking series with our chefs. So we asked our chefs to come up with cooking videos that would help teach easy to cook meals for the families and friends. And I'd just like to share that we did this for 5 chefs during summer, but now we're on to our second cooking series. And I'd just like to share one of the cooking series that was done by our chef. Here, I hope it plays. Hello. I think you're not able to see the video. Okay. So can you see it now? Sorry.
Yeah, we can see it now.
Okay, so this is really part of the um, technical glitch. So as I was saying earlier, we came up with engaging activities with our faculty and students. We had this ITH and Barter community. We had cooking live videos with our chefs, featuring our chefs. So we run it every week, and it garnered a lot of likes and shares and views with our students, and of course the greater community. And it's kind of challenging to continue and sustain the engagement with their faculty and students now that the interaction, face-to-face interaction, is very much limited. But we still continue to hold online birthday celebrations for our faculty and staff. We make it a point that our faculty are engaged with continuous meetings, meetups with our faculty and students. During the pandemic, they even came up with a photo collage of our student leaders and our faculty. That it's like a statement of support for the tourism and hospitality industry. It's just that we are one in this fight. Be brave. We will be able to be brave and resilient. We will be able to bounce back. Our tourism and hospitality industry will be able to bounce back. So, in closing, I'd like to share that when you talk about in the context of building trust and in relationships, it's really about being brave and resilient, is facing the challenges head on as one. And you have to sustain or maintain the engagement of your faculty and students amidst this pandemic. You know, being brave is not being scared of things. In fact, it's being scared, admit that you have uncertainties, but still taking the risk. And in that context, I'd just like to leave a short quotation about it's not really the smartest or the fastest businesses that will thrive. It is always the kindest. Thank you very much. Sorry for the glitch earlier. Pleasant good afternoon and thank you.
Thank you for your inspiring speech, Dr. Joy. Your comments were especially helpful to those researching this field. Now, let's welcome Dr. Tilakavati Shanmuganathan. Dr. Tilaka will share strategies to create and build relationship between educational institutions. Please welcome Dr. Tilakavati Shanmuganathan.
Hello, everyone. So let me share my slides with you. Okay, before I start, all right, I'm a senior lecturer of the University of Malaya. Thank you, I would like to say to Dr. Sharla for inviting me and Taylor's University. I'd like to extend my greetings to Yang Bahagia Professor Dr. Muhammad Saleh, Professor Dr. Pradeep Nair, Professor Dato Harlina, Dr. Joy Sheila, and colleagues and also attendees of this webinar. I am going to take on a little bit of a slight variation in the discussions thus far. So my slides are there. It's okay? Sharla?
Yeah, good.
Okay. So I'll start off by introducing a particular screen, an image here called the VUCA. The VUCA environment is what we have actually experienced in the past couple of months. So the landscape of the higher education during COVID has been really very complex. It's been volatile. We have been uncertain about what is happening. There was no clarity in the way we have seen things happening around us. And this unprecedented pandemic was not something we were ready for because it was a global emergency. It was a global crisis. And so once upon a time, universities were seen as being aloof and disconnected from the real world. And they were not really involved in businesses and ordinary people. But the Malaysian government has put in place particular steps to ensure that universities slowly started engaging with the local community, with the businesses, and with ordinary people. So COVID-19 has actually allowed for a brief re-emergence of public and government trust in expertise. So university has played a different role now. So university and the medical institute researchers, public health officials and politicians have all something very common now. They were fighting against the same enemy and they were dealing with the same problem. So let's see how this landscape of higher education has actually not been spared at all. So I would like to talk about the question that was posed to me, and the question is how to create, prioritize, and also build relationships with educational institutions and other organizations. And I have come up with the 5 R's. So the first R is to revisit, the second, research, the third, recreate, the fourth, renew, and the fifth, to reconcile. So let's look at the first one, revisit. What is happening around us? We seem not to have access to the internet. We seem to be very reliant on a lot of family issues. The pandemic has shown us all this because we seem to be bogged down with a lot of things. Students were stuck in the hostels. There was no sustenance. There was no food. So the global crisis has changed the landscape. So there was no access to internet like the one shown here. You see a student actually seated up here on the roof trying to get connected. So, you know, these are things that are happening around us. So it has changed the landscape of higher education. So there has also been a major build-up, meaning local SMEs were suffering. There were micro businesses that were shutting down. Health and service sectors were, you know, in a state of frantic because they needed to get garments and a lot of things, you know, to protect the frontliners. Education was also affected because all schools were closed down. All institutions of higher learning were closed down. And what was very important, the major build-up, was civic spiritedness. Suddenly, we see people springing up. So people were actually revisiting what was happening. Okay, were we really ready? Was the university really as aloof as should be? So education is the only thing that seems to be actively engaged with the life and problems of the community, because the university has now taken on a social responsibility. There was so how do these world-class universities function? You can actually look at global partnerships and collaborating with other institutions, where today you find that the HEIs are actually looking at domestic and also global factors. So the leaders of the universities have to be very much aware of what's happening around in order to run the university. So the impact on how the universities are to operate seems to be constantly, changing. So partnerships have also to be doing the same. There has to be constant communication with all stakeholders, which is very essential. This brings me to my next slide, where how do we build these partnerships? So I have actually come up with these stakeholders. So first, the academic and student community, the industry, the local community, and government agencies. But first, we have to actually look at how the HEs or the higher education institutions actually play a part. So let me take you to the post-COVID now. Okay, so post-COVID, what is expected? You find that research and also predictions have come about that it will take up to 2 to 3 years to actually fully recover from this effects or after effects of the COVID. So now people are asking, we are all here online, so if that's the case, then is teaching and learning going to happen the same way? Is there a need for physical classroom or activities? Or would people prefer blended learning? So there are a lot of flexi solutions here. Assignments, admissions, exams, academic schedules have all been actually rearranged. But the question always arises as to how much equality is there in terms of the input received. So online education may be a choice platform where you find that, a study actually showed that this kind of education could actually impact the future of universities globally. So research would be the second one. So research, how much research collaboration is restricted because of this pandemic? And what roles can universities play in society? As a consultant, developer, manager, what? We can be so many things, okay, if we put our heads together. And how is this new normal, so-called new normal, going to affect research collaborations between the universities as well? So looking at another important thing as well, during this pandemic, you find that it's not just businesses, but even universities have a problem, and that is being financially strapped because restrictions of inflow and outflow of students has actually taken place already, and is affecting the geopolitical divide of higher education. So how are HEIs going to manage these financial blows? So an example I have actually read is this, that universities in the Australian continent are very dependent on international student fees, and they are the hardest hit. So you can see this, this is how it will impact us in future. All academics can actually contribute through research and publications and implementing tasks immediately. So even this pandemic has actually created funds that are created by the government and also international bodies where they have initiated a lot of academic research where you find English is used as a lingua franca. And this has also facilitated how local and international students, staff, researchers can be a part of a resolution to this crisis. So universities depend on international academic staff to actually collaborate in research. Okay, that brings me to the third R, recreate. So the role of the HEIs has now been somewhat restricted. So each university has its niche area. So building on the niche area and looking at how you can actually further enhance this could be the way forward. So study, work, and travel virtually is in the plate. So it can be done at an international capacity. Universities should also invest in cross-cultural university partnerships. Research with international academics where you allow the sharing of experience like what we are doing now, sharing a lot of things and developing constructive ideas, having civic spiritedness. All this actually allows for a great sharing experience. Okay. Let me give you it was lagging for a while. Okay, my internet has gone off, see. So, all right, let me just share with you the screen again. Okay, all right, so the testimony would be how NGOs can work together as well. So the universities are already working to find vaccines. They have already, done things like, seek help from NGOs to do medical PPE garments, masks, etc. And there was a lot of study and also research made and also sharing of these kinds of things with the local community. Local communities were recruited to be tailors. The researchers were the ones who were coming up with, the research output. And you find that in UM, for instance, we have actually researchers from the Faculty of Computer Science and IT who have assisted the frontliners by setting up a COVID symptom monitoring system called also the Cosmos, which helps to monitor patients with suspected C19 infection, where these are for people who are self-quarantine at home. So it's a device that is used using the mobile phone. So you can see how people have to work very quickly to come up with ideas, with novel ideas to work together. And you, as a researcher, you can also identify joint collaborative projects, for instance, preparing the students, to be able to do research as well, and also academics to do publications. Now, the fourth R would be the renew. So I am going to touch a little bit on the industry, where a study has cited about 73% of activities could replace humans through existing technology. As you can see, some courses like programs like the law, accounting, data processing, programming, journalism have all actually been able to go through using technology, digital. So very soon you will find certain courses actually going that way. So we have to renew the way we offer programs to international students as well as our students. And we need to also prepare our students to be entrepreneurial and resilient and able to reinvent themselves and their type of careers that they're going to embark on. Okay, the last one is to reconcile. So the academic and student community are very fond of going on mobility programs. So they have been going abroad, traveling across the globe. But now with this COVID is extremely restricted. Even if you think and you want to pay, you can't travel abroad. So everything is done virtually, and virtual international and global connectivity is still possible. We can still encourage cross-cultural communication. We can allow our students to be equipped with technical and soft skills as well. And we can also exchange ideas through global conversations. And the community are also not left out. For instance, we have a project in where we are actually based in the Pantai Valley. And so what we have done is we have gone to the local local vicinity. We have looked at the community. We have helped to build the township, and we have managed every aspect of the life. For instance, recycling trash, educating the children, doing micro business, also digital marketing. So the campus of the future will become a creative hub where stakeholders will come together. And finally, we have the government agencies as well. The government agencies have a very important part. So Professor Dr. Muhammad Saleh, this is an appeal to you as well. We have the infrastructure, but we forget that this infrastructure is not extended to staff who have, internet access issues, because we have that in the institutions, but not at home. So the pandemic has shown us that. So the digital interface is also very important to be equipped across the institution as well as to homes, where now if we are going to do blended learning, perhaps we have to also think about giving access, easy access to this. Perhaps it's not in your portfolio, but another ministry. So we also have to give importance. This is something that I realized as well, because when the university reopened, I found that many of the staff were still not able to go because there were certain parts of the institutions that were not open. For instance, baby care, nurseries were not open, so they could not leave their children anywhere, and therefore they had to be at home. So having dialogues with stakeholders constantly is very important. Another thing about government agencies is I'd like to cite the example of China, where the government of China, of course, we know that the pandemic actually started in Wuhan. So the Chinese government has already created a platform to hear people's grouses. So they have actually created something called Liu Yan, or the governmental interactive platform, which provides web care to citizens in all states of China. So they have to post their problems up so that it reaches the government officials directly. So what do we do at the end? So when I talked about the VUCA environment, something that is volatile, uncertain, we have to make sure that we recover from this global pandemic by having vision be vigilant. We have to understand and unite together as universities. We have to learn, to collaborate and have clarity in thought. We have to act and be agile in making sure that we are fast and we are able to help the local community. And to conclude, I would say that we have to respect and engage with the knowledge from outside the academy as well, because it's critical for us, the experts, to also find solutions to the problems faced by the global community. Universities should engage and reflect on their relationship with industry, the community, and government agencies, and gain insights into how the university can improve its engagement practices. And to come back to the first question again, so how do we create, prioritize, and build relationships with educational institutions? Revisit, research, recreate, renew, and reconcile. So universities have an important role to play as anchor institutions that support communities in transition. So rather than undertaking knowledge work on behalf of society, what we should be all doing is to collaborate with society. So this means building relationship with business, industry, government, and not-for-profit agencies as well. Thank you very much. Thank you, Taylors, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Tilakawati. Thanks for an excellent presentation, Doctor. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome Yang Bahagia Professor Dato Insinyur Dr. Muhammad Saleh Jaafar, who is the Deputy Director General of Higher Education, Ministry of Education, Malaysia. Dato has played many significant roles through the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Higher Education, Ministry of Science and Technology, and Ministry of Public Works on key initiatives related to research, education, and professional practices. He played key role in the development of MIRA instruments in 2006. He led the development of rating instruments, which is still being used now by the Ministry of Education since 2009. The systems include MyQuest rating for private colleges, PolyRate rating for polytechnics, and MySpec rating for community colleges. In 2017, he was given the task to revise and develop a new system for Setara ratings for universities and university colleges too. Dato believes in bringing out the best in people and believes everyone can create values for the organization. His leadership style can be summarized as listen, learn, and lead. Thank you, Dato, for taking the time from your busy schedule to be here with us today. And it's my honor to welcome Professor Dr. Pradip Nair, a multiple national and international award-winning education innovator and leader. Professor Dr. Pradip Nair is the Deputy Vice Chancellor and Chief Academic Officer of our Taylors University, Malaysia. Thank you for joining us today, Professor. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome Yang Bahagia Professor Dato Insinyur Dr. Muhammad Saleh Jaafar to share with his views the higher education landscape, higher education aspirations, strategic plans, and initiatives on collaborative engagement. Welcome, Dato.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Okay, my sound is clear enough?
Yes, good, clear.
Before I move on, yeah, thank you very much for organizing this webinar, and I feel honored to be included in this discussion today. And also, I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate Taylors for being our latest private university #1 in the country through the latest university ranking. And the topic that we are having today is very, very important. That has two keywords that really attract my attentions, and I think it has been the content of the presentations of the other colleague. And I would like to thank also Professor Pradip and Professor Halina and Professor Dr. Joy and Dr. Tila for sharing your views, and inshallah for actually being moderator for this session. The two words that I thought is very interesting and actually deserve deeper discussions. I'm sure this is not the first and the last discussions on leadership and collaborative engagement. And I'm going to actually address the topic from the higher education landscape, from the bird's eye view, if you want to say, if you want to call it bird's eye view, and try to provide the national agenda with respect to higher education. And I think Professor Datuk Halina has actually mentioned the word collaboration, and everyone actually discussing about collaboration. And this is all, there is actually, everything is actually leading to the need for us to get to know each other better. I think, the trust was the key word. You cannot develop trust without, you cannot develop collaboration without having this trust. So, getting to know each other, probably this forum is one of the important sessions that we get to know each other. And I noticed that we have a participant from Indonesia, from Philippines, and also from India as well. So welcome to Malaysia, although this is on the cyber world, but still welcome to Malaysia for all the international participants from this webinar. And I'm going to share with you a little bit on higher education landscape. I'm sorry, I think I'm being assisted by someone to move through the slides. And I think just for everyone's information, these are the landscape of Malaysia higher education, that we have a lot of institutions of higher learning. Altogether we have over 400 private higher educations, and we have 100 community colleges, and all this data is also available. But what is also important, we have 10 foreign branch campuses in the country. So, you can see how big, being a small country, we can actually say that we have a big numbers of higher learning institutions. I think we probably see the reason why this is the case. Can we move? So if you look through the development of Malaysia higher education as well, I understand that the Far Eastern University in Philippines was established in 1926, but university in Malaysia started at the earliest is 1960. So I think we are still very young, and many of the universities are starting only after year 2000. So being where we are today, I think Malaysia higher education landscape has gone, in a big way. But I think to be where we are today is difficult. But I think to sustain and to retain, in fact, or to move forward is going to be much more challenging. But I think you can appreciate the growth of Malaysia education for now. So, and we also would like to share with you next slides. These are some of the, I think there must be a very good reason why these universities are being set up in the country, and the government intention to actually bring in, the spectrums of learning experiences to Malaysians and also foreign students into Malaysia, actually by bringing these foreign branch campuses. And I think a few more universities will be coming up from maybe some from other countries, but at least you can see here most of the universities are from English-speaking nations. But can we move next? Next slide, please. This is the reasons why we have so many institutions of higher learning. I would like to actually focus your attention, take your attention to the right side of the to the slides. You see, as far as the access to higher education is concerned, when we developed the blueprint way back in 2015, Malaysia was basically 10 years behind Thailand when it comes to access to higher educations. And this is basically one of the reasons why, the opening up of private higher educations and also foreign branch campuses were basically encouraged in order for us to actually increase access to higher educations. And even as of 2018, we are still way behind. Of course, if we compare to Hong Kong and Thailand and South Korea, we're still very much behind. We are only ahead of Indonesia, but I think Indonesia is also catching up very fast when it comes to providing access to education. And the other landscape that we'd like to take your attention would be the important roles of private higher educations actually, playing their part in higher education for the country. Altogether, we have a population of 1.3 million students, both in private, and nearly half of them are actually coming from private higher educations. Now you can see also that 75% of international students in Malaysia are actually in private higher education. So this is a kind of important, significant role that actually being played. Not to mention the economic benefits that is actually generating from private higher educations. And if you move next slides, I think I've mentioned about the kind of economy that the country actually benefiting. But what is also more important is providing the workforce that the country needs. Yeah? Can we move next? One of the most current landscape that I would like to share with you, I think everyone mentioned about COVID-19. I think our intentions or our momentum to actually be the hub for educations is actually very much at risk. Probably it is true for other countries as well. But if you look into from application perspective, January is actually before the MCO, and April is just immediately after MCO. You can see the significant, huge drop in international students' applications. So if there very little applications, that means will be very little enrollment, and therefore, the momentum to actually host international students in the country will be at risk. And also because of COVID, not just because of the lack of international students, there are many challenges. And not just, I think basically private higher education will be at a higher risk. And obviously the reason I'm presenting this is that as we say, kita jaga kita, I mean, we need to collaborate in order for us to sustain and also to maintain ourselves. I think we'll bring ourselves to that discussions, but these are the challenges, and everybody is facing the same challenges. Yeah. So, and this is why the need for us to actually collaborate is even bigger now. So, if just a snapshot of the current landscape and also what we have in store. And if you look through the blueprint, I'm just going to run through very quickly the national aspirations for our blueprint in our next slides. Regardless, where we are, whether we are private or whether we are public, whether we are schools or whether we are higher education institutions, we have a singular system aspiration, also student aspirations, where access, quality, equity, unity, and efficiency are actually a very important agenda that every higher education institutions are going to need to address. And the same thing also with the student aspirations. No matter how we deal with delivery, we design our curriculum, we engage industry, we engage community. The student, the student aspiration, the attainment for student aspiration remains the same. Meaning to say that we want to produce a balanced, graduates with good personal attributes as well as very knowledgeable and very skilled for the workplace. So if you look through, I think that Halina has also mentioned. Next slide has also mentioned about. I think my next slide is about. These are the when we developed the blueprint. Although this is actually way back in 2015. Many of these are actually still relevant, if not more relevant even today with the global economic crisis. We felt it in 2015, but we feel it even more today. And globalizations and also the digital age. I think, now it is even more important. Somebody was showing just now about the student having to climb up the roof, and someone in Sarawak or Sabah putting up in the YouTubes that she had to climb up the trees in order to get to the signals and everything. So the digital learning, we felt it. We wanted to push it all along since 2015, but now we realized that we have no choice except to embrace them and to put everything in order to achieve this. But the rest of the issues and challenges remains the same. We are worried about our institutional reputations, the need for industry academia collaborations. And I think we need to talk a little bit more about industry academia, because many of our we can learn from a success story of some of our good universities in the country where they record 100% employment when they engage industry very, very seriously in their program delivery. And obviously, there are, and you talk about return on investment, you talk about R&D inputs. So the blueprint are actually addressing all these challenges, and we hope some of you can actually download the details of the blueprint, and many of the initiatives are actually still relevant. In fact, need to be prioritized now. So next, and the blueprints actually try to call for us to realize that we need to transform higher education in Malaysia. I think Datuk Halina mentioned about the program that UKM recently introduced to actually transform our university graduates from job seekers to job creators. And I think this is many other universities are also developing the curriculum along this line. And it's very interesting now that Ministry of Higher Education are receiving more and more programs, new programs that actually introducing what we call as minor or double major, or even introducing entrepreneurship in their programs. And I think we are encouraging universities to be doing this because even if we are taking, say, language programs, you are not destined to be just teachers. You can actually get involved yourself to be entrepreneurs using your skill in the language that if you are following the language program. So I do not want to go to the detail, but I think the first transformation are very, very important, even more relevant now. Maybe, and this require, no university can actually do on their own. No faculties or no departments can do on their own. This is where the multi-faculty teachings are actually very important. And the moment we say multi-faculty teaching in one course, one program, one work-based learning, how do we actually integrate our professors from business, computing, engineering, or even architecture into deliver, their programs? I think this is something that we need to talk about in our discussions today. As next slides. So as far as the Ministry of Higher Education, this is a very busy slide, but just to make you guys confused, maybe, just to give you an indication, the kind of initiative that has been driven by the Ministry of Higher Education ever since we developed the blueprint. I think, again, Dr. Halina mentioned about 2U2I, and also we talked about APEL, we talked about gap year, we talked about ICGPA, integrated CGPA. Those are actually even more relevant now because we used to be assessing students based on academic achievement, but our ability or lack of ability to assess the students on their personal capacities, are actually very much lacking. And I think this is also, and we are still developing ways and means to actually validate, our not just delivery, but validate our assessment to really, give a proper assessment for the other side of education, which is actually more difficult and challenging. So you can see again, we can talk about some of this. I actually presented here as well. If you go to the next slide, one of the signature programs that we have, the concept of service and experiential learning. I think this is where some of the private universities are doing, because I think you are more flexible in running and changing your programs. To utilize service learning and experiential learning, we are introducing learning without lectures. And I think this is where the challenge of the lecturers, I have a feel now that it is not the students who feel uncomfortable about online learning. It is the lecturers who feel more uncomfortable about dealing with online learning. I think the capacity to actually handle this, I think suddenly now we realize that, we need to cope with these changes. And I've received a lot of, feedbacks from the lecturers themselves that, when we have a face-to-face lectures, students hardly ask questions. I mean, especially Malaysians, they are reserved in asking questions in the class. But the moment they have the online sessions, everybody wants to ask questions because they are not seen when they are actually asking the question. And they can ask the question, they can post them at odd hours, 2 o'clock in the morning, meaning to say the lecturers will be busier when we conduct, not face-to-face lectures. And also, this is the concept of learning without lectures and also evaluation without examination. And learning without lectures and evaluation without examinations are calling for much more collaborative work and much more trust that between one institutions to the others. I think we can talk about how do we, accredit assessments and accredit learning when our own students are actually learning from some other institutions. Yeah, so these initiatives are all there. I think the only questions that the ministry would like to know and learn later on would be how much these are being taken up, being managed and being conducted by our own higher learning institutions. So, so we can go next. This is an example. This is started what we call as learning from the pro. This is actually, I think we all know many of our lecturers are having very little, not many have a very wide experiences in industries, and bringing industries closer to campus would be more meaningful. This is started way back in 2016, I think, but we need to actually be doing this a little bit more. I know universities, if I can quote Malaysian Technical University now, they managed to actually get German consortiums of companies to actually participate in their learning programs, where their students are actually going to be hosted by German's company for 2 years, and where assessments and learning experience are there. So, engaging with the companies, getting to know them will be very, very beneficial for university. So please, when we talk about collaboration, we are talking about beyond collaboration between the universities. We are talking about collaboration with industries. What is also important that I think many of us are also missing, collaboration with NGOs. NGOs are just like they are actually industries. In Malaysia, if we know Mercy, we know Islamic Relief. These are the people who are actually doing what we call as a social work. Just imagine if the students are actually going through the experiences through this industry, what we call as the NGOs industry. I think, and I do not know how, this is why I think Sharala mentioned about Setara ratings that I actually led, but of course many people contributed to these ratings. We actually put in how much universities are actually engaging communities, bringing their students into communities, not for the reason of getting good ratings, to be honest with you, although many people are trying to do that, but I think the basic spirit would be exposing our students to industries and also communities, and of course we can actually talk about and discuss about this kind of collaboration, and the ministry will always be willing on hand to actually facilitate the discussions between universities and also industries and also communities. Just to give you an example, the Anton success stories with the German company. The German company may not be dealing directly with the universities. When the ministry comes in and facilitate, then the German company becomes very comfortable in facilitating and dealing. So please use the ministries to to facilitate your need. I think we have been doing that. And if the other example of ministries can actually help facilitating would be in, the case where, we are introducing a Wakaf-based institution as an example. Of course, in some other institutions, we talk about endowment. But when it comes to Wakaf, Ministry of Higher Education have actually facilitated with many universities with respect to Majlis Agama. I think Wakaf are actually managed by the Majlis Agama. A state belongs to the state, and the university has been trying to penetrate or getting the help of the states, which has been very difficult all these years. But because of the ministry's intervention and facilitation, now almost all universities, public university, already have access to Wakaf fund on their own. So just giving you an example how ministries can help and facilitate everyone. Next, a little bit on our blueprint. I'm not going to go into detail. We are not prescribing for the university what needs to be done, but the university needs to get information on the best practices. Ministries also provided what we call as some playbooks. How to enhance governance, enhance academic productivities, and recognizing different excellence in career pathways and also income generation. So these are some examples what ministry has been doing, and in each one of them, university can learn from other best practices. So next, of course, we need to have another sessions on all these what we call as playbooks. Okay, what's the way forward? We realize, and this is especially true for private higher educations, maybe not so much for public. And there are so many agencies that are actually playing their role and having their parts in making sure the success of collaboration. So Ministry of Higher Education is not the only ministries, and we realize that there is a lack of top level fit for purpose coordinations, and there are some conflicting and constricting policies, and and there are so many. We realize, to be honest with you, there are so many policies that universities management has got to follow and to comply with. And this is why now, if I can say next, if I can share with you, the government now, the Ministry of Education now have actually established what we call as Pemuda. Yeah? I don't know, Pemuda is a body that can facilitate these different agencies that universities have got to deal with. And in the Pemuda, we are going to address many different pillars for universities. We talk about governance issues. We talk about financial sustainability. I think this is even more important to private higher educations. And the next pillars will be, I think we can move to the next slides. I'm not going to go into detail, but the points are still there with you. We talk about internationalization. How do we actually help facilitating, decline, to address decline in number of international students, lack of inter-agencies coordinations, and these globalizations. When you talk about internationalization, we just introduced before COVID 2019, we introduced what we call as edu-tourisms. We know that it is not easy to get mobility students programs where they need to spend, a semesters or more. But I think with the edu-tourisms concept, the Ministry of Home Affairs have actually opened up, their doors and some policies. And we also help, in our Pemuda initiative, we are proposing, these are the items that the Ministries of Higher Education are actually trying to get what we call as currently there is no post-study work visa. And also we are also requesting the government to allow for our international students to work while they are actually while they are on campus. And also providing, giving some, opportunity for them to actually continue to work if the country needs them to work after their, currently it is not available. Yeah. So the Ministry of Education now are trying to get the support from other ministries. And I think we talk about innovation for and teaching excellence. I think someone mentioned about our penetrations of online learning, our coverage. Actually, just to inform you, MCMC has actually we have actually worked with MCMC. They have actually agreed in principles to actually provide very good infrastructures. And now what they need us to do is actually trying to provide them the data of the student distributions, where they actually need to invest in the infrastructures and everything. So I think that is actually coming, although this is not the responsibility of Ministry of Higher Education, but we are actually, going what we call as an outreach to relevant ministries to help. So, we need to be able to, what we are trying to do now is that we are actually reaching out to all other ministries, whoever they can actually help us. And this is also true with other ministries, not just MCMC, we also talk about MITI, we talk about, and other ministries. So this is all these challenges that are being listed here require what we call greater collaboration. So if I can, go to my last slides, the current challenges, and we talk about, one of the biggest challenge that we talk about today would be autonomy to decide on the mode of learning. I think everybody seems to be a bit worried about accreditation process, the strict compliance. I think this is a challenge that everyone has got to deal with, and how much are we able to empower program providers to to allow them a little bit more flexibility in allowing their students to learn and to be assessed by other institutions. I think MQA, Malaysian Qualification Agency, have actually came up with a very good recommendations on micro-credentials. And many universities, I think, are very, I can say very slow, in actually adapting. I just would like to know how many universities have actually, allowed their students to take, courses from other universities and then accredit them and transfer the credits. And as far as MK is concerned, this is already in place. But in terms of implementations, I think many universities are still not doing this. Yeah. So collaborative models that we have. This is about education, but when we talk about collaboration, we talk about other aspects as well. Somebody was mentioning about collaboration in research. Here we talk about collaborations in providing educations, and in most cases, if I can conclude a little bit with my presentation here, the interesting part about collaboration would be, there's not much more additional budget that is actually required. Sometimes we are worried about additional budget, but I believe that a budget would be not very substantially required additionally, and this is more on the concept of having the ability to provide value propositions to the partners that we want to to work with, and this is also about synergy. And when we talk about collaboration, the very basic concept that everyone is a winner in this collaboration. So I would believe that if we all believe in the concept of the more we give, the more we get, and we probably can see a lot more collaboration. We have talked about collaboration so much, but I think we have not seen, at least from the Ministry of Education is concerned, during Datuk Sri Idris Yusof's period, he talked so much about commonality and collegiality. But from what we see, not much are actually being done. So we like to actually, see more of this collaboration actually take place from the minister's perspective. So with that, I hope I have covered a little bit, bird's eye view on the aspirations from the ministries and how the ministry can also play our part and play our role in providing facilitation and assistance. And we are, we'll be very happy, to facilitate, and very happy to see much more collaboration work that needs, collaboration among the institutions. And in fact, across borders, and we have a lot of, colleagues from Indonesia and Philippines and India here. We hope that, real, more meaningful collaboration can take place in the future. So thank you very much. I hope I've not exceeded my time. I feel that I'm rushing a little bit. I'm more than happy to respond to any questions.
Excellent presentation, Dato'. Thank you very much for your key points and the overview of this topic. Dear ladies and gentlemen, now we come to the questions and answer session. If anyone has any questions, just post them in the chat box. I'm sure speakers will be pleased to answer them. And now we have one question to Dato'. The question is, how do you want to strengthen your engagement with your students, especially at this time when there is a pandemic and there is a shift from the traditional to flexible learning? The question is to Dato'.
Which Dato', Sharela? Sorry.
We have two Datos here. Okay, the question is to Dato' Salih Jafar.
Oh, how do
you want to strengthen your engagement with your students, especially at this time then when there is a pandemic and there is a shift from the traditional to flexible learning?
Very interesting question. You know why? I thought, with this, the new generations of WhatsApp, Facebooks, and all this social media, and even we ourselves, we feel much closer when we interact, with our family, with our colleagues, and even so with our students using the social media. So, I think the media that we have should be able to be used. I mean, we should be able to know and to be able to use our social media to strengthen our engagement with the students. And hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for your explanation, Dato. Since we are running out of time, now I'd like to welcome our Honorable Professor Dr. Pradeep Nair, Deputy Vice Chancellor and Chief Academic Officer of Taylor's University, to give his closing remarks. Welcome, Prof.
Okay, very good evening to Yang Bahagia Prof. Dato Insignio Dr. Muhammad Saleh Jaafar, our esteemed Deputy Director General for Higher Education, Prof. Dato Dr. Harlina, Prof. Dr. Joy Sheila, Dr. Tilagavati, my colleagues from Taylor's, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and I want to thank everyone who have made time to join us today. Let me begin by first saying how grateful I am to the Deputy Director General of Higher Education to join us at the Taylor's Social Science Dialogue webinar. And I believe Dr. Sharla has elaborated on the background of our Dato' Saleh. But I just want to say that we in the private higher education sector feel that we are very blessed to have Dato' Saleh as our key spokesperson and supporter in the Ministry of Higher Education, because ever since he came on board, he has been instrumental in instituting the right policies to support both the public and private higher education institutions, especially during this difficult time. And I think someone mentioned earlier, if you ask me to describe him, I think he's a great listener, but he's also a man of action, and both of which have really benefited higher education. Also allow me to congratulate our speakers from UKM and UM on their university's achievement in the latest QS World University Ranking. Of course, Taylor's, we are also elated that we jumped 135 places to enter the top 400 universities in the world. And we also are now the only private university in Malaysia to be ranked in the QS top 50 under 50 years. So, of course, it appears that all of us are competing in a way to rise above each other. But I believe it is in collaboration between the private universities and between the private and the public universities that will lead us to achieve greater heights together. I just wanted to focus on two key messages as I close this webinar. And the first is to give you a little bit of a background why a private university like Taylor's have embarked into offering more creative and more humanities type degrees. Now I say that because there is a general misperception among the public that degrees that guarantee you a job or degrees that are directly related to a vocation are degrees that are that has greater currency. And the Malaysian education system has given this nation some of its greatest leaders and thinkers in the last 60 years. But unfortunately, in the last 40 years, industrialization have forced our universities, especially our private universities, to turn their attention more towards producing graduates that can hit the ground running and who are ready to serve the economic needs of the country. I'm not underplaying that role, but I believe, Taylor's believes, that the nation, as Malaysia progresses and as society continues to be more educated, this country needs thinkers, philosophers, advocates, people who are able to understand and analyze societal needs and challenges, people who are creative and independent-minded. And that's why we introduced last year a Bachelor of Performing Arts. And this year we introduced the Bachelor of Fashion Design. And next year, in March, we will introduce the Bachelor of Social Science in International Relations and the Bachelor of Social Science in Social Innovation and Social Change. globally, social science is a very popular field. And if you look at some of the top universities in the world, social sciences are very popular and in high demand. If you look at Sage Campus, I think in 2019, 4 out of 10 students that graduated from universities with a social science degree in UK, and that in US, social science was the 3rd most popular field for bachelor degrees. But in Malaysia, there's an overwhelming perception, or should I say misperception, that there aren't enough jobs for social science graduates. And thus, the most talented, the best students, rightly or wrongly, are often lured away to more vocational disciplines that are believed to be better career prospects. We at Taylor's University want to change that and to prove that there are meaningful jobs and careers that can be gained through a study of social science. And this is one of the reasons why we continue to organize this webinar and that focuses on bringing together some of the best thinkers, some of the best advocates to come together and start creating this awareness that for this country to truly develop, we need not just doers, but we need thinkers as well. When we structured our social science degree, we decided that we must deliver this in a work-based learning mode, or otherwise 2U 1I mode, where students will spend the first 2 years at Taylor's, and the final year, the entire final year, is spent with some of our partners. And I'd like to share with you who our partners are. So we have signed agreements with Tenaga Nita, the Penang Institute, Zubedi, Project Dialogue, Federation of Reproductive Health of Malaysia, PT Foundation, Yayasan Chowkit, the Institute for Democracy and Economic Affairs or IDEAS. These are some of our partners that will become the place of learning for our students in the final year, so that they can immerse themselves in real life projects and in order to acquire real life learning as well. So I've thrown a challenge to my deans and my heads of school, and I said, 30 years from today, can we imagine that the Prime Minister of this country comes from a private university like Taylor's? And it is for that reason that we believe that a university like ours and other private universities must begin to embrace the social sciences, the liberal arts, and the creative industries in a more meaningful way. And while science and technology will provide us with new tools to make a living, I believe social scientists will be the ones that provide us the means to build our lives meaningfully and be happy. So the benefits of these programs will also enrich the whole university community, because now that we have degrees in social science and in the creative areas, we are able to offer minors and free electives to engineers, to medical students, to pharmacists, to a whole range of other science and technology courses, so that we are able to offer education that is more balanced. Now, let me say a few points with regards to the topic that we've been discussing in our webinar today. While collaboration between universities has existed for a very, very long time, I think it has often been overshadowed by competition. Somehow, we naturally embrace competition faster than we embrace collaboration, as one of our speakers pointed out. I think COVID-19, the pandemic, has actually put a lot of stress on the sustainability of universities and colleges, who have invested hundreds of millions of dollars in physical, financial, and human resources. And very often they've invested this on their own. And I believe that the pandemic has accelerated the need for government, for policymakers, and particularly university leaders to start to reevaluate the current paradigm and look for ways to make this sector more resilient during crisis. And the question is, must we invest and do things all by ourselves so that we remain competitive? I believe that I want to share with you some of the interesting findings from our own research in this last 3 months. We found that collaboration between universities actually increased when the universities closed. During the pandemic, there was far more people in Taylor's talking to people in other public and private universities locally and abroad during the pandemic than when we were running normally. And collaboration between departments within the university also increased during the pandemic compared to during the normal times. And I also believe that the pandemic has brutally exposed the weaknesses of universities, whether we like to admit it or not. It has exposed more of university weaknesses than its strengths. Or perhaps it has exposed their lack of desire to embrace opportunities. So I agree with Datuk Saleh and the other speakers. I think now is the time for the leadership of universities to explore new ways of working together. Can we imagine that instead of every university investing in its own learning management system, can we imagine a common learning management system shared across by several universities? Can we imagine a common library management system like the ones in Saudi Arabia, where all the universities in Saudi Arabia subscribe to one common system with the support of the government? Or can we share human resource, physical resource? And as Datuk Saleh pointed out, I think the policies and the support is already there. If you look at some of the policies from MQA and the Ministry of Higher Education, these are all possible. And now it's really up to the leaders of universities, whether they can rise above competition and look to collaboration so that our students can take core and free electives across any university in Malaysia or in the region, or can our students curate our own degree consisting of courses taken from 4 or 5 universities locally or internationally. So I think really the goal is to try and leverage on each other's strength and not to try and focus on each other's weakness. And I'm happy that the Education Ministry launched the Education as a Blueprint recently and has outlined that collaboration between institutions is a cornerstone for the way forward, especially for private higher education institutions. So in a time when face-to-face communication is limited, I really hope this webinar has provoked us to rethink and modify our ways of doing things. So on that note, I wish all of you a very pleasant evening and stay safe always. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor, for truly memorable remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, we are most grateful to all speakers and participants who have joined us here and hope that you have found this session fruitful. Moreover, you will use and implement the strategies to build trust, leadership, and partnerships in your own organizations and relationships. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.